Yeah, I'm dancing here. Okay, so we're gonna go into this nice YouTube video that was just done specifically on the FX3 and the Venice. And the best thing about this whole entire video is it's the actual lenses. He uses the real lenses for cinema on both cameras, and it makes a huge difference. So let's watch this, and I'm gonna give my comments as the video goes along. Let's see, switch. Come on. Why is this not transitioning like it should? Thank you. Sorry about that.
which is useful for videographers needing a quick turnaround time. Both cameras support E-mount lenses, but the Venice comes with a PL mount adapter. The Venice actually comes with a lot of different imager modes that allow you to shoot with a variety of lenses, including anamorphic lenses, if that anamorphic look is something you're going for. But we're not doing that here. We're sticking to spherical lenses for this test. To even the playing field, we rented a PL mount adapter for the FX3, and we equipped both cameras with the same 35mm Zeiss Supreme Prime lens. It's important to note that the FX3 wasn't really made with these types of lenses in mind, so without the right accessories, it can feel a little clunky. Ideally, you'd want some extra support, even more than what we had.
So one of the things I like about this particular video is that he really is using the same lenses. He's using the same setups, the same type of matte boxes type thing, and giving the FX3 and the Venice a real run through its money. Excuse any screw ups. I'm sitting at the casino relaxing with a time to just kill. So I thought I'd just jump in and do this. It's not professional. Literally like built 3 scenes, and I'm having stupid issues because I'm not trying to be a producer and everything else at the same time. But I want you to enjoy this video because this shows a lot of what's changed in the industry. An FX3 and a Venice being this close to each other. And I watch.
Even more than what we had on this shoot. We're also forfeiting the FX3's ability to use autofocus. Cinema cameras like the Venice do require manual focus anyway, so generally you'll want a follow focus or a wireless follow focus system that an Assista camera can operate from an external monitor. Or you can just use your hands right on the barrel. Something the Venice does have, which you'll miss on the FX3, but find in its older siblings like the FX.
So when you look at that camera, the Venice, that's a $100,000 camera. No, $65,000 camera to $100,000 depending on how you set it up and what accessories you have with it.
Or the FX9 are built-in ND filters. ND filters are more often than not a necessity.
Now, for those who don't know what ND filters are for, basically they're like sunglasses for your camera. So if you're in a really bright area and you want to fill in light later, but you want to get everything in the background to look really cool, and match like this is looking really lit nice back here. The ND filters really help you with that, and having those internal is a plus and a minus. I like them in interior. Being able to combine a couple of things like mist filters and other filters together, or changing out the look of your ND filters, because some of them they do have a different type of look that can match a lens better, maybe not so clinically sharp, things like that.
Necessity when you're shooting outside. For the FX3, we're attaching this matte box to the front of the lens and placing ND filters inside as needed. You should kind of,
which frankly is my preferred way of doing it, but I will use interior ND filters. There's a lot of great ones out there. Canon does it. Sony does it. There are some adapters that are part of the Red series that do it too.
be getting the idea here that in order to keep up with the Venice, the FX3 needs a lot of attention.
Whoa. That part's not really true, because the Venice, you're pretty much putting most of the same accessories onto it. A handle, a matte box. The only thing you're not putting on is the ND filter, and you're still going to put the follow focus on. So really it's only adding in one accessory.
Incredible feature the FX3 has, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you know a bit about the FX3, is its low light capabilities. The FX3 has a dual base ISO of 800 and 12,800. This is
which is insane. So basically you can see in the dark, you see in the night. Hold on, I got a phone call coming in. So Y'all watch the rest of the
the
video.
win over the Venice, which has a dual base ISO of 500 and 2500. And there's a surprisingly minimal amount of noise at the FX3's higher base ISO, as opposed to when you just crank the ISO manually. But we'll get more into that later. The FX3 also has size going for it if you're a solo shooter or working with a small crew. That being said, I found the Venice to be relatively easy and straightforward to operate. But the FX3's more accessible capabilities and its size make it more ideal for a solo shooter. When compared to the Venice, it's obviously smaller, more akin to cameras like the A7S III, and generally the camera is just more nimble by design. And with its impressive internal image stabilization, going handheld or on the shoulder isn't out of the question. The FX3 also comes with this nifty top handle for audio inputs, and it's a great attachment for handheld shooting. All this behind the scenes footage you're
He made some really good points there. That stabilization feature is really huge, especially if you can put about 3 pounds onto that FX3. You really can get a stable shot that you can't get with a Venice without rigging. And this is a huge advantage with these smaller units. You don't have to carry a backpack rigging system and carry a 20 freaking pound camera. So if you can get this close, woo! Come on, YouTube, catch
It was
up.
actually filmed with the FX3 in a handheld rig by our freelance camera operator, Dan. Because of its size, the FX3 is easily paired with a small stabilizer or other low-cost rigs.
Yes.
And while the Venice
Huge
can be placed
versatility.
on the shoulder, it is pretty heavy. And it would require additional support to really hold this camera with all
And this is what I was talking about earlier. He was saying there's no accessories, but you see there's a handle on there. So you have to get a handle for the Venice and you have to get a handle for the FX3. Every accessory except for the variable ND filter was the same you got to get in the Venice. Plus, if you look at the extra accessories you got to have to run this rig, and you do need a 2-person to 4-person team versus a 1 to 2-person
all
team.
of its accessories. Sony has also developed the Rialto system specifically for the Venice, and it's pretty cool. This basically allows you to detach the sensor by way of a durable cable, making shooting handheld a lot easier, and it allows you to get shots
This one feature is sick. I love this about the Venice.
in tighter spaces. But this setup does also require a lot of other moving parts, and in most cases you'll need a camera crew to help you pull focus and a lot of other things. As far as inputs and outputs go, the Venice really has it all. Like I
Now, this is the weakness of the FX series in the Sony lineup right now. No SDI, no time code. Oh my God, the headaches that come from this is unbelievable. Now, that being said, for $1,000, you can get past that problem. I right now have the Atmos Connect 7-inch, I think that's what they call it now. They've replaced it with the Shogun and the Shogun Ultra, but they both have SDI inputs, SDI outputs, 12G, and HDMI in, HDMI out, which you can run both at the same time, which is really cool. Plus a few other extras, and having the RAW feature go through it, where you still have to buy a special adapter for the Venice to get RAW.
This camera is really built for a team to use, so it has a lot of compatibility for accessories. It also has 2 screens on either side, as well as a viewfinder, and a really comprehensive menu.
And why it has 2 screens on there is because you have to have one for your AC and you have to have one for the operator. And that does make a huge difference. That's why it says it's a multi-person camera versus a single-person camera. And having the advantages of the FX3 being fairly close to the Venice is a huge plus. I'm glad this review is going on.
Menu system. If you use Sony cameras like the A7S III, then you'll be pretty familiar with the FX3's menu system as well. The FX3 just has the one screen, which is very adjustable, but for this test, we'll be attaching an external monitor via HDMI. For the natural
Now, let's talk about that Sony's one screen thing. That's not exactly true. You can connect the app to this, and you can connect, especially if an iPad, you can connect like 4 of FX3s to just one of your iPads, or you can connect one to here and you get false color controls that you don't have on the camera. And an AC can actually control these features and still control the focus. So they can actually have a handheld rigs to control all the focusing wirelessly, and they can control multiple of the features on the camera, so the camera operator can just focus on the job. And one of the advantages of this over the Venice is that you don't have to be really right on top of the Venice to make the other adjustments, and the cam op doesn't have to worry about making the adjustments, so you don't have to have that bit of communication between the cam op and the AC. So you do have some kind of advantages going this route. If you've not used the app, you don't know what I'm talking about, that makes sense. If you have used the app, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and it is a spectacular piece. So let's continue on.
Natural light test. Once we matched the settings on both cameras and put some of those extra ND filters in for the FX3, we were able to match the exposure. The real giveaway for the FX3 is the way it treats the highlights. The Venice generally has better highlight roll-off as opposed to the FX3, where the contrast is much more noticeable. Even in the harshest conditions, the Venice is doing a better job with the highlights. We used the same LUT when color grading, but the footage from the Venice was a little easier to work.
Well, as you can see right there, they weren't exposed exactly the same. They were exposed as close as you could. So some of the highlight roll-off literally comes from them not being exposed exactly the same, which is fine. It's very difficult to match the exact of an internal ND filter with an external ND, especially when it's not a variable ND. You're just dropping in NDs, whereas with the Sony system, it's electronic, and it can actually do minute variations to it and give you almost this absolutely perfect ND, which is one thing I do love about it.
Work with. While the FX3 skewed more green and was a little more contrasty, the Venice seems to read colors more accurately. But overall, it wasn't that difficult to match the footage and get a pretty neutral look from both of them. I also really love this monitor. This small HD 702 is really nice. So shout out to Small.
So as you can see here, he's rigged up. He's got a monitor on there. He's got all these accessories, the same thing we were talking about at the beginning of the video that you have to have on this. It's generally better to have a 7-inch monitor on this, and then generally the weight is like 21 pounds to 35 pounds for that camera.
HD for doing a great job. When shooting handheld, honestly, it was easier with the FX3 just because it's lighter. But generally, the internal stabilization on both cameras was a huge help and pretty impressive. For the studio test, we wanted to see how each camera performed in different lighting scenarios, particularly in low light options as well. We started with a simple 3-point lighting setup along with a backlight to light the backdrop in order to get a nice evenly lit shot for both cameras. For these shots, we have each camera set at their lowest base ISO, the Venice at 500 and the FX3 at 800. Then we took lights.
And right there, you can see the difference. The artificial sharpening on the FX3 is obvious, and the almost digital clinical, whereas the Venice isn't quite that clinically detailed, but it's almost human eye less detailed. I mean, some people have hawk eyes, so can see all the details, but some don't.
Lights away one at a time and tried different combinations. This helped us see how each camera treated the shadows and the highlights. Again, this is generally a really close call, but I do feel like the Venice is superior here. To me, the FX3 still isn't as strong in terms of highlight roll-off and the way it treats colors in the skin tones and shadows.
Of course not. You don't have as much data to work with. I believe the Venice is a 12-bit, and I believe the Sony is a 10. I know the Sony is a 10-bit because I use the Sony all the time. But the Venice, I believe, is a 12-bit, which definitely gives you a little more room on the highlights. That's just basic math and colors, so you just happen to have more to work with.
All that being said, it's still a really close comparison. Then we took all the lights away, and this is where the FX3 was really impressive.
Yeah, I found this to be one of the big, huge differences with the FX3 in Sony in general in their prosumer line cameras. 500 ISO, 800 ISO, and it's night and day, because that much ISO difference is not huge. It's like a third of a stop difference, maybe half a stop, somewhere in between a third and a half. And dramatically different in look.
We switched the Venice to its highest base ISO of 2500 and the FX3 to its highest base ISO of 12,800. The difference.
And this is where things get stupid. I have shot against Canons of every single high-end $6,000 to $55,000 camera. This is just dumb. The Sony technology when it comes to low light with the FX3, with the A7 IV, with the A7R, when you're sitting at 10,000, 12,000 and higher ISOs up to 25.6, it's stupid the amount of data you can clean up and make a good shot out of it and start off with a relatively meticulously beautiful shot to start with. And I've had to put ND filters on to make it look right in a night one, which is crazy to stop it down by a stop and a half.
The difference here is pretty obvious. The FX3 is completely illuminating our subject. And while you do see a little bit of noise when you switch to the higher base ISO, for 12,800 there really isn't that much, especially when compared to the Venice at 2,500.
And that's what surprised me about the Venice. The Venice, you have to feed it light. Actually, most of the cameras that are in the Venice classes, you have to feed them light. The Ursas, the Reds, the Aries, you have to feed them light. They are designed to work in a light spectrum, amount of light that you get, whereas these FX series cameras, FX6, FX3, and even the FX30, you don't need to feed them as much light.
It can adapt to virtually any lighting scenario, and you can shoot in low light environments with a lot less help from natural light or hefty lighting rigs. The only source of natural light here was this.
Now, if you saw that grade there, that grade shows you the amount of color there actually is in that 10-bit file. He's been doing a basic LUT drop on a LUT drop, and I have to admit the LUT drop on the Venice is easier to work with. It's a 12-bit versus a 10-bit file. I believe it's a 12-bit. Hold on. You know what? I'm going to verify this while we're sitting here. Venice's files. I could have Venice, Sony, 12-bit. Hold on. My bad. Because sometimes you got to make sure stuff. So is it 12-bit? Because that is one of the things that's way different in exposure tools. All right, hold on. Tech. Recording. Is that a 12-bit file or a 10-bit? Does it say? Hold on. I'm checking right now. It doesn't tell me if it's 12-bit or if it's 10-bit, but I'm fairly certain it's a 12-bit file, not a 10-bit file. Man, this is getting longer than I thought it was going to be. By the way, great review, buddy. Great freaking review.
This window due to a broken curtain. But we managed to flag that off so it didn't illuminate our subject too much. You can see just how dark the room was in our behind.
Do you see that? Do you see that? That's how dark the room is. I have been in many rooms that dark with that little bit of ambient light with a Sony camera and just blew my mind. And we have C70s, R5s, Black Magics, a whole bunch of different versions of those, and the Sonys. And we find that the S3s, the FX30s, the A7 IVs, they just killed in low light and still come out with superb results.
Behind the scenes footage, shot with an FX3 at 800 ISO.
Ugh. That's great. Love that.
I've had a 300 light shot on me like that.
Even though
before.
these two cameras have different strengths and weaknesses, and even though the Venice did pull ahead a little in terms of image quality, this test really proves to me that the footage you can get from these two cameras is.
This shows if you are using the same type of lenses, the same everything down the road, you are going to get phenomenal results with these newer cameras. Now, I have found when I've been using anything that's a newer sensor from 2015, 2016 and newer with beautiful glass in front of it, I've been able to compete with cameras 10 times the cost and 20 times the cost and come out with images that really get clinically close to what my clients are looking for in those higher end costs that they can't afford yet.
Really comparable and pretty close. And maybe you don't need the most expensive cinema camera to get a beautiful image.
If it was,
Okay, that's
I'll leave your hand like that, bro. If it was 15 years ago, the answer is yes, you would need the better camera. 10 years ago, a decade ago, yes, you would need the better camera. About 8 years ago, things changed. When Sony started dropping the A6000, that's when it changed, because that was one of those sensors that was underwhelming when you got it, but they were holding it back because they were trying to sell it to another manufacturer. I know some people who explain some of this, but that sensor got a huge upgrade in the 3.0. And ever since then, Sony just kept pushing out great products and pushing everybody to get better with their sensor technology. I wish they would have done better with their cooling technology, but
what I
they
really
have now
want
with
to
the FX
stress
series.
is that these types of comparisons are not meant to disparage higher end cinema cameras.
Hell yes, it is. Bro, you do disparage higher end stuff. And it's not a bad thing. This allows us to focus that $100,000, at $60,000 elsewhere. So let's just say we go to Venice and we go $60,000 in budget to $70,000 in budget for a used one, fully equipped out. Or I can get 3 FX3s and I can spend $40,000 on a set of Zeiss beautiful glass. And then as I need a Venice, I can rent it, but I have 3 cameras running 3 shots on magnifique Zeiss glass or Cook glass or whoever you want to go with glass, even Airy glass with a PL adapter.
Like the Sony Venice. There are immense benefits to using these types of cameras that consumer or prosumer cameras just don't really have yet. But the gap between these two types of cameras is shrinking really quickly. And
the gap really isn't there anymore, especially if you're able to use RAW. Switching that camera over to RAW is less than $800, and the type of memory you need is super cheap. So, for example, for every hour of storage that I'm shooting RAW on a Sony camera costs me roughly $150. And that's shooting RAW 4K 60. If I'm shooting 24, it's like $100. And I'm using an Atomos recorder with a nice monitor, so a 7-inch monitor, so $1,000, which we all know that's a cheap monitor cost, and when you're in that level there. But let's just say we go with the rest. This is a whole nother level of just unbelievable. Well, I'm gonna have to get going here soon because somebody's gonna want me to bring the car up because I'm really getting into my time here. But let's watch the rest of this video, which will be like a couple more minutes, and then I'll do another one later. Peace.
And that's just really exciting for independent filmmakers, videographers, or in this case, anybody who shoots with Sony cameras. But what do you think? Do you think we're approaching a time where larger productions will switch to smaller, inexpensive, or prosumer cameras more often?
Yes.
Or are the high-end cinema cameras here to stay for the most part?
Not only going to switch over, they're going to start using the same lenses they've been using as higher-end cameras on the lower-end cameras.
Let us know what you think in the comments. And you can subscribe to our channel to see more gear reviews.
Please look this guy up, subscribe to his channel, give him love. Everybody who sees me on LinkedIn, please give this man love, subscribe to him. Be someone who subscribes to this guy. He made an amazing video.
Comparisons and a bunch of other cool stuff. I'm Justin with MPB.
Well, that was fun to do. It was a lot of fun and all the way around, just under a half hour. Y'all have a great night. I have things I have to do. So that being said, thank you for watching the video. Take care. Bye-bye now.